Hello everybody. We are in training live stream. So, okay, right, it works. Okay, good. So, we are online, and as usual, it's the friend talk about course books with me, Evgeny Usachев. I'm your host. So, today we have a special guest. That's why our live stream is in English. So our guest today is Jеймс Эгертон. James is a Delta qualified teacher, trainer, a CELTA trainer, and a coach at the International House Young Learners teaching course. Currently, James works for International House Academia Britannica, and today we are going to cover two big issues. The first one, his experience of working with with English file course book, and in the second part of our talk, James will give you some information about the course, which is called Back to School with CELTA method. I'm just waiting for James. I hope he'll be in a minute. All right. James, are you with us?
Good morning.
Lovely. Okay, James.
So I'll turn the camera around. You don't want to talk to my cup, do you?
Okay, fine. Right. Are you in lovely Italy right now?
I am in lovely Italy, more specifically, lovely Rome.
Okay, okay, great. So as I told our subscribers, we are going to cover two big issues today. The first, your personal experience of working with a particular course book, English file, yeah. And the focus today is on teaching teens, right? And the second big issue, your course, which starts 4th of September, this Saturday, in Trend English. So I believe you'll give some outline of the course and say why we combine back to school issue with CELTA method. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, James. Firstly, I ask the guests some sort of personal questions. And my first question is, do you remember your first course book you used for teaching teens?
Yes, I do. It was my first year teaching in Spain, which was 10 years ago, and I used the FCE result book. It was a green book by University Press, and it was. Do you know this book, Evgeny?
Yeah, I know, of course.
Yeah, it's a classic. And of course, it was my first year, and I had actually started teaching without any training. It was part of my university studies. And so I used it very unwisely. I was just opening the book, doing the next exercise, doing everything in order. They all passed the exam, but yeah, I feel that they could have had a better, more, a richer educational experience if I'd used the book more carefully.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right, and would you share experience of working with English files? So why did you choose that particular book, I suppose, at a certain period of your teaching career?
Yes, so I really like English file because for me the texts, particularly the reading texts, are very interesting. Also the listening texts. The grammar is integrated into a communicative purpose, and it's very well grounded in the context of the topic, of the two-page topic usually. Yeah, it's very well grounded in context, so students often see the practical use of learning a particular piece of grammar. I also really appreciate the extra communicative activities at the back of the book. Those are really useful. You have to adapt them, of course, like you have to adapt all course books, but most of the time the students get a lot out of these. And you have student A on page 150 and student B on page 190, and they have different roles. A lot of role plays and interesting situations. So if we're talking about teens today, I suppose most of the English file series can be used for teens. one of my favorite texts is the one in English File Upper Intermediate, 3rd edition, about how men and women argue differently in a relationship. So I find that very useful for my everyday life. But you know, for teens, some older teens might find that useful. For younger teens, you might have to sort of skip over that. But I'd say 95% of it can be for teens and adults.
Mm-hmm. Did you use all the components of the book? I mean, the student's book, maybe online resources, and the teacher's book, stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah. I've used a bit of online. For the online, I've been teaching younger kids and teens, and I found the Pearson resources excellent. They've really stepped up to the plate with the extra online resources since since we've had the quarantines around the world. But the English file stuff is also useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And being a Delta trainer and a CELTA trainer, so I believe before this live stream we talked to you and you said textbook is just a part of my teaching.
Yes.
Yeah?
So right? I have to correct you slightly. I'm not a Delta trainer. I don't want to give any false advertising.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Maybe one day. I have the Delta
qualified, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. But I'm a CELTA trainer at IH, right? Yes. Yeah, I did tell you yesterday that it's a part of my teaching because I think it's really important to adapt the course book, which is saying earlier, it's something that I didn't do in my first year in Spain. And now I recommend to teachers, especially, even if you're just starting off, to be more flexible. So, for example, if you see a lead-in activity that is in the book and you like it, use it. But if you think you can adapt it to your students, because of course, as teachers, we need to know our group as carefully as possible, as personally as possible. Then change it. You're not chained to the course book. That's always my message.
Okay, right. My second question about getting back to a course book, particular course book. So, do you have any particular criteria when you select a book or material, mostly course books, as we talk about course books? So, what are your criteria for your choice when you choose a course book?
Good question. Well, I make sure, first and foremost, that the aims of the students are reflected in the course book. So for most of my students here at IH Rome, they have aims which are related to communication. So I know it's a very broad thing to say, but if their aim is to communicate well with English, then I need to see that, for example, the language, the vocabulary, the grammar, the functions are all in context. And that the 4 skills are covered. Oftentimes writing is left off of course books, or it's just sort of a little bit in the corner that you can ignore or just set for homework. But I appreciate it when course books give they give space and importance to all 4 skills. I think writing is really, really important, especially for critical thinking, for example. If you can write a good essay, it shows that you can actually organize your thoughts in some kind of manner. So yeah, those are the things I look for. And of course, a bit of color and some good pictures. These are also important for engagement.
Okay, so you know that say course book market is currently changing. So do you just follow up the latest trends in publishing, or maybe you just pick up some books which were released this year or just last year? So do you keep an eye on what's going on in publishing?
These are good questions. I wouldn't say I don't have my finger too hard on that pulse, but I'm actually really interested in older trends. So in the early 90s, there was a boom of the lexical approach.
Okay.
I really appreciate, for example, Andrew Walkley and Hugh Deller's Outcomes book, because it is based on the lexical approach. And as I was saying to you yesterday, I'm just finishing off a master's in applied linguistics. And it was one of my projects, I looked into the lexical approach, and the evidence in favor of learning a language lexically is extremely impressive. Unfortunately, for most course books don't reflect this, but Outcomes is one of these course books. So, you know, I don't always think that new is better. I think there's some great publications that have come out that maybe haven't got the popularity that they deserve yet, but we'll see in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see it. Right. So I suppose some of our subscribers know that you run the course starting on the 4th of September, which is called Back to School with CELTA method. Do you see any connection, any bridge between, say, using a book and the course you'll be running?
Yes, we can segue smoothly into talking about the course, because the course will, I think, so to go back to my first year teaching in Spain 10 years ago, I could teach that class, and as I mentioned earlier, they all passed the exam and I had no training. Okay, so a course book, just the course book, can get your students to where they want to go. But with the CELTA method, the communicative approach that's used on CELTA, and, you know, adapting what's in the course book using this method, I think the students get a lot more out of it, and then you as a teacher will also get a lot more out of it, because you see that you're actually the captain of your own ship, that the course book page is there to help you, but it's not there to imprison you, to force you to do things in a certain way. And that's something that I think is really important for any teacher, whether you've been teaching for 1 year or 50 years, that you don't just do the same thing again and again every year, because the students will be different every year. You know, even the same person will change year by year, their hobbies, their interests, their level of engagement, and a long list of etceteras. So yes, I think what we'll learn on this course is how to use course books and other resources, but you know, the question was about course books, how to use course books in the best way possible, and adapt them for the classes that we're teaching.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In a nutshell, for those who are not familiar with CELTA method, so what's the essence of CELTA? Would you explain it to our viewers?
Yeah. Okay. So do you mean the sort of the layout of the course, or? Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
the idea itself, the idea of CELTA method, because
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I understand. So we'll start with the method, and then I'll talk about the details. So the method is based on the communicative approach. Now, again, once you start reading up on it and you look at the communicative approach, it's such a broad spectrum of different methods. Without going on and on, I could speak about this for an hour, but without going on and on, the CELTA approach is more related to what Dornier called the principled communicative approach, because there's a hardcore communicative approach, which is more like a dogme, you know, where it's just communication with no structure, with no form, for example. Now, the CELTA method is very much a principled communicative approach. So you do have exercises on form. There is accuracy before fluency in the lesson structure, which we'll look at on the course on Tuesday. Tuesday's today, excuse me. On Saturday, we'll look at the different lesson structures that you can use for different lesson types. So yeah, the point that we try to get across, the main point on the CELTA course, is that we want students to be using the language, communicating with the language. So that's always the main objective of any lesson. The second part of that was, well, what does this look like day to day? You know, how do we get to this utopia? during the course? Well, it's 120 hours, so it's very flexible actually, and it's getting even more flexible. I'll explain more a bit further on. So it's flexible because you can do it in 4 weeks. Well, currently online you have to do it in 5 weeks, but if you're face to face, you can do it in 4 weeks, which is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, plus lots of other things to do in the evenings and the weekends. Very intensive. Or you can do it twice a week. So at IH Rome, we do a course Tuesdays and Fridays. There's one starting in October, which I'll be tutoring on, for example. You can also do it once a week, which takes about 6 months. It's like a never-ending kind of Lord of the Rings odyssey. And the main components are teaching. So the great thing about the CELTA course is that you teach during the course and you get feedback from the tutor and feedback from your colleagues. You have to teach for 6 hours. For me, this is the most important and very different. So you get practice from usually day 2 or 3. You're straight into the classroom. We're not just talking about teaching, we're doing teaching, and then we're analyzing and trying to improve with what we have there. Then we have seminars, different aspects of teaching, different techniques that you can use. Then you have to do some video observations as well, observe teachers live. So it's very difficult, but everybody that finishes it everybody says that it's very rewarding and extremely useful. And for a lot of people that have been brought up with more traditional methods like the grammar translation method, they find it extremely, I would say, empowering as teachers and very motivating as well, because when you see students using the language that you're teaching them and communicating with the language, then I think it vastly makes it a lot more fun.
The course which starts this Saturday, it's a one-day course. So which I would say, which parts of this long Delta course are you planning to introduce within the course, which is the one-day course? Yeah.
Yes, so we don't have 120 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
We have 9. So of course, I would say that this course is on Saturday. So this is the Back to School with the CELTA Method course that I will be teaching most of the seminars, and there also be from Elena Perezada, who all of you know very well. I'll talk about the structure of Saturday a bit further on, but your question, Evgeny, was what are the parts of this course that we're going to be looking at on Saturday? Unfortunately, there's no time for teaching practice in terms of the participants won't be teaching, of course, but we'll be looking at the structures and techniques that we can use with each type of lesson. So the first session is about receptive skills, so listening and reading. A break. Second session, productive skills, speaking and writing. So I'll include as much there as I can. I'm a huge fan of Adrian Underhill and all his work with physical pronunciation. So there'll be a lot of pronunciation section. How to make writing more interactive and interesting. I mentioned before with course books, it's often sort of left out or sort of given as homework because we don't think collaborative, but we can. There are many things. After lunch, there's a session on systems, lessons, vocabulary, grammar, functions. Then Elena has a session on how to integrate role-play games into your lesson plans, which I personally have found really, really fantastic in the last couple of years to include role-play games in all different types of lessons, actually. So I'm looking forward to being a participant in Elena's session. And then the final session is about extra things that we don't really have time, which I think are super teaching. So things like language, things about how you use a teacher, and a few other things. So it's just the final session is just just 1 hour, and we'll just be running around a few other things that people could be looking into if they wanted to. So we look at the main structures of the lessons, but the participating. They won't just be passive observers. Demos, and in demos, I've chosen texts and topics that I think will interest them as teachers, as educators as well. So there's kind of a multi-layer approach there. So we'll be looking at something which I'm teaching in a text using the CELTA method, and then we'll be looking at the CELTA method that we've just used. So there'll be lots of different angles to glean really important lessons from, because the objective is, if you're going back to school this week or next week or in the following weeks, then you can use these techniques and these structures to improve your lessons immediately. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what outcomes do you believe participants will have? So because it's pretty brief, it's intensive, right? So, and still, I believe they get something for the course. What their expectation, what they can get from the course, one-day course.
Yeah. Mm. So, I think by the end of the day, every participant should be full of ideas for their own lessons. And it will be on Saturday. I want everybody to be full of ideas and that means very practical, straightforward things. Okay, well, I have this text planned for Monday, but actually we worked with the text this way, or we looked at this idea, maybe it's out, and I want people to be able to experiment in their own teaching as quickly as possible. A second thing I would say is, I hope that people are interested in the texts that I choose, especially for the Receptive Skills session, which is the first one. The texts are about educational psychology. I won't give any more spoilers, but they're based on educational psychology. So I hope also people will have the time and enthusiasm to look into those a little bit more as kind of a meta goal, if you like. Not just the nitty-gritty of the classroom environment, but also take a step back and say, well, what am I doing as a teacher? How am I communicating with my students? What kind of comments am I using to praise them? And can I adapt that slightly, again, on Monday or the week after? You don't have to do everything on the first day. So it's about ideas and about just showing people, like you said, we only have one day, so it's just about showing people different paths, different possibilities, and then it's really up to every individual to follow those paths if and when they choose. It's not an advertisement for CELTA. If you've done the CELTA course, if you've done the CELTA course, it's excellent, and many people, because we've run similar versions of the course twice before. Of course, you know, with Trendy English, we did one in June. And also in August, it was Trendy English's idea to have this course. So I was really honoured to be asked to be the trainer on it. Many people have done the CELTA course, done this one-day course, and they say that it was great to have a revision of everything and look at things from a different angle. Because when you're on the course, there's so much to do, and there's a lot of stress, and time is not your friend, and you know, just to have that day where it's a bit more relaxed, well, a lot more relaxed, I hope, but just to see things in a different light. So on that side, it's good. And also, if you're thinking of doing the CELTA course in the future, then it's a good opportunity to just to see if it's for you. Because if you like what we look at on Saturday, and you're more interested in expanding on that and actually teaching with those techniques and structures and getting feedback, then I'd say maybe start looking at the possibility of taking the full course, because what we do in the full course is condensed into what we're looking at on Saturday. So I'd say it's, number one, a refresher without pressure if you've taken the course, and number two, a try before you buy if you're thinking about doing the course. So it's there's something for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Thank you, James. So, dear colleagues, if you want to sign up for the course, so there is a link in the profile header. And the course starts this Saturday, 4th of September, if I'm not mistaken, 10 a.m. in the morning. Okay, okay. Good. James, as a summary of today's meeting, right, as we talked about first using course books, may I ask you what piece of advice would you give to those who are planning, say, to use, for instance, English file for their teaching? Can you give a couple of tips or piece of advice?
I would say, number one, make the most of the communicative tasks at the back of the book, because to focus on the main part of the book. But actually, I find those extremely, extremely useful. Students enjoy them. Students use the language. And so just because they're at the back of the book, they shouldn't be left off. I would really recommend getting to the back and having a look through, because there's a lot of gold at the back. That would be my first piece. Number two, I think the listenings and readings, for example, can be even further explored. I would recommend not just using the English File course book, but using these excellent topics to extend discussion. So, or to extend the discussion, or to revise other bits of language. So, to give you one example, the text about how in the upper intermediate third edition, the text about how men and women argue that we mentioned earlier. So it's a perfectly good lesson. The exercises that are included for reading for gist and reading for detail are fine, but you can also run that into a discussion about regrets of how you've argued in the past, for example, and use that to revise the third conditional. And students often have a lot to say about this. Excuse me. Yeah, I think there's so much in there. There's so much potential in that book for extension and for exploration, because most of the topics are really, really engaging.
Okay. Thank you, James. Thank you very much. So
thank you.
Thank you for the stream. So, dear colleagues, I'd like to remind you that today's live stream was with James Эгертон, CELTA trainer, and this Saturday on the 4th of September, we have one-day course which is called Back to School with CELTA Method, where James and Elena Peresada will train you to be a better teacher in the new academic year. Thank you, James, and hope that the course will be really engaging and useful for our participants. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Yeah.
Thank you. You too.
Dear colleagues, this Thursday we have another live stream about the Cambridge books, as usual, at 9 a.m. So in this profile. So I'll see you on Thursday. Have a nice day.